is working. Okay. I do apologize. I see someone's here besides me. And I do not know what I'm doing. Okay. Let a couple minutes pass. Hey Christian, you're one of the first YouTubers I started watching when I started skating. Good to see you still doing your thing. Hey, thank you so much. That's funny that you say that, because I was actually talking to somebody on Twitter about skating and just longevity and skating in general, and I was thinking, I was like, you know what, this isn't, obviously this is YouTube and I have a YouTube channel, but I don't think I've ever identified with a YouTube skater thing, because back when I started this channel, which is what leads me to what I was going to go to. I mean, I should go ahead and say it. I think that as far as personal, dedicated skate channels, I think this may be one of the oldest ones. This channel, when it started, YouTube was so different than it is now, and there wasn't like a financial incentive. What it was like a better alternative to Google Video, which was it predated YouTube, And the first video, well, I don't want to say the first video ever uploaded, because back in the early internet, we used to FTP videos to like a personal web server, and you share a link that someone else would have to download, like over dial-up, or eventually over broadband. But even then, let me see here. I'm sorry, it's probably loud. There we go. But Google was kind of one of the first video hosting services, and a lot of what Google Video allowed you to do was similar to YouTube, but without the community aspect. And even then, like for me at least, the early YouTube days, I wasn't really, it wasn't the same thing. I wasn't trying to be part of like a YouTube community. It was strictly just trying to find a place to upload my skate vids, and let's see here, pardon me, I'm so sorry, this is rude. I don't know what I'm doing. But anyway, yeah, so like the first video, my account was created, I believe, either a month or two, maybe a little longer, after YouTube was created. And so, you know, I'm an old skate rat, and obviously, and I imagine you probably are too, and a lot of the homies that watch the channel are fellow old people, you know, that could relate to another, you know, older dude that was just posting whatever. And I'm a geek by trade, I'm a geek by nature, and so yeah, that kind of bleeds over into everything, and that actually leads me into what's going on here. Whenever I receive something that's cool from a skate company or whatever, and sometimes like I'll reach out to companies, and this is also, I'm going to say this because this video is going to stay here on the channel, and so yeah, anything that I can mention that's skate related will be a bonus. But if anybody's interested in doing skate reviews and things like that, just consider this. Like, I live in a small city by most people's standards, but I'd say maybe a medium-sized city in between two very prominent and defining cities in Louisiana. So there's Baton Rouge, the governmental official capital of the state, and there's New Orleans, which is by any measure the cultural capital of the state. And also, like, I kind of jump back and forth between where I associate and, you know, spend my time. Like, I hunker down in one place or the other. And so like right now I'm like in my New Orleans mode. It's where I work, and it's where a lot of my friends are that I'm really in contact with, the ones that aren't immediate here in my city. But anyway, all that to say is I live in a nondescript city in the middle of nowhere, or at the bottom of nowhere to be geographically correct. But all of those skate reviews, almost all of the skate reviews that I've done, I mean, for one, I never I had no trouble receiving the stuff. I didn't do anything special. I just wrote letters, you know. I grew up in an environment where I was sort of taught to write letters about products that you hate, and write letters to companies about products that you really enjoy. Just write letters, you know. And if you're curious about something, you know, find an email address somewhere on the website and try to find the most appropriate person you can possibly find, and inquire about the product that they're pushing, or, you know, selling, I should say. But yeah, just be inquisitive, you know. Reach out and send emails. That's how all of this stuff happened. Was just I will say that the very first review that I did was actually based on a bunch of industry skate drama, If anybody is familiar with the old war on blank skateboards debate that had happened in, I forget what year at the moment. Well, basically, Blitz Distribution and Steve Douglas at his distro was what? Why can I not remember the biggest skate distro to ever exist? Anyway, Blind and all the companies that Day One skated for. It was Rocco's distro. Anyway, and some other folks had gotten together to start this big campaign against blank skateboards, which, that's a thing. That's a good conversation, but they also included shop boards. They were trying to get skate shops to stop selling blank skateboards and to also stop selling shop skateboards. And they were trying to also, on top of that, instead of, for one, they were trying to get shops to stop carrying the blanks and stop selling their own shop boards, because they perceived a cut in their income. And that was very clear. Blitz Distribution created a website called A World Without Pros, and they kind of laid out this story about essentially, you're not supporting the pros, therefore they're gonna have starving kids. And there was like this weird guilt trip thing. And the thing that's messed up about it is that the Trans World magazine was complicit in a disinformation campaign as this was going down. So Trans World had a publication called Trans World Business, and the only people that really saw that, for the most part, were skate shop owners. And it really was a business magazine. When you're reading it, it's not like reading a skate magazine. It's interesting, but it's not like getting the cool story bro kind of vibe. It's really some nuts and bolts business stuff. And anyway, Trans World created, they worked with an organization called the IASC, and that's the International Association of Skateboard Companies, to which well-known skateboard companies like FedEx were members. And so it's just corny, cheesy, corporate bullshit, really. And the IASC partnered with Trans World at the time to create this publication and essentially try to guilt trip skate shops into not purchasing wood directly from manufacturers. And so, like, our shop had used Penn's wood, we used Chapman for a really long time, and we also used, Southeastern board supply or something like that. They make really good wood, but I just don't remember the name of the company. But they're a Southern press, and we had gotten them because we're a bunch of dorks, and we figured, they make good wood, and also because of how humid it is over here, the wood that we're getting doesn't have to go from Chapman in New York down here. We don't know if the weather affects wood in any particular way, but hey, there's also the Southern company that's doing right, and as a Southern, skate shop, we're like, well, we're going to support this Southern board manufacturer, and that's where we're going to get our wood. So what the IASC companies were wanting to do was to get shops to stop buying blanks, stop making their own shop boards, and start partnering with them. Start partnering with these distribution companies, and basically make the same logo boards but be co-branded with, our shop at the time, Small Time Skates. You'll see in my archives of Small Time Skates, it's still here, but anyway, imagine, like, for us, a small time skates slash dwindle distribution. So it'd be like small time skates slash blind, or whoever. Well, those are fine. Collaborations are great, but the reason why kids were buying blanks and buying shop boards, well, for one, there's two different reasons. You got some kids that definitely do hoard these blank skateboards, but if they're going to be willing to buy a skateboard that's worth $2, they're not going to be buying a $50, $60 plus deck. That's not on their radar at all. And with the shop boards, though, that's a little bit different, because if you look at the history of skateboarding and you look at the roots of some of the bigger brands, even, or some of the OG brands, you look at like Alva Dogtown, especially, like they're textbook classic. Well, those brands like originated from a crew and or a shop, and they were the shop brand. And so that's where they came from. So when your local skate shop decides to create its own identity and put some boards out, that's really, they're taking part in a classic activity that skate shops have been doing since the beginning of any kind of formalized skating that like we recognize it today. So anyway, the companies were just wanting to really, I don't know, they were just really being jerks to some shops, like by even present. It was insulting, is what it was. And so anyway, I created this website it was a collaborative effort, because I had been talking to a lot of the homies at Slap Magazine, the forum. I'd been doing my own research, and I'd been getting some information from people that were in the industry that had some passing or direct affiliation with the IASC, which everybody was just like, this place is shady or whatever. These are obviously allegations. I'm not saying that the IASC is shady. I think they are. I feel that way, and I met many people that felt the exact same way. And so essentially I created this website, and it was a Flash website. So the original website that Blitz Distribution had created was a Flash website. At the time, I happened to create a lot of Flash content, and so they used Flash because they wanted a certain look to the site and a certain type of interactivity. And it just so happened that I, as a Flash developer, I was able to replicate the functionality of the site, and I didn't duplicate the design. Well, I mean, I to a degree I did, but it was done as a parody. And so my website, so their website was A World Without Pros, and my website was called A World Without CEOs. And it was just stupid fun, and we raised a little hell. And that was like one time where we raised hell with the industry, and it was a lot of fun. But anyway, one thing I was saying, and I just sort of derailed myself, and I will do that again. In fact, I created a small presentation so that I can stay on track with the main point that I wanted to cover. And what this is, let me see if I can move some things over just to get this right. There we go. Bear with me. And I will say, if there's anything worth editing out, any possible clips that I take off of this, I may just put over on my other channel, Grim City TV. I'm in the process right now of completely redoing my office where I'm in right now. So this is like a multi-function room, and I'm actually going to be taking out a couple of the other functions of this room, moving. I don't know, every couple of years I redo this office, and I think I've got an idea here, and it may be the last time that I redesign my office, so that's gonna be pretty rad. Anyway, the topic of this particular video is Ryan Beckford, and let me switch over really quick, and I'm not gonna pull like the whole presentation thing, so if you're able to watch this full screen, I would totally recommend that. Ryan Beckford, if you don't already know, is a pretty popular guy. Let's see here, I guess I didn't save everything. I created this PowerPoint presentation like right before I was working on it, up until I started streaming, and that just goes to show that I cannot do things last minute. But anyway, Ryan Beckford is known on TikTok, and he's on Instagram. He has a presence of about 100,000 people on Instagram. So I just want to point out that the reason that I'm even bringing this up and putting it on this channel is because he is a skater. I had realized I had unfollowed him and then refollowed him because of the dynamics of the conversation that we were having as this was taking place. But anyway, I noted that I had originally started following him in 2014, and from what I remember from following Ryan was that his humor was really just goofy, flat out, straight up goofy, corny, slapstick comedy. I like that kind of comedy. I like all kinds of comedy, but the silly stuff, it's just good fun. I did not know until recently, I just hadn't noticed that his comedy may have swayed a little bit. I'd noticed on his Reddit, I noticed from comments on his Instagram, which is a hard thing to chase because he's been deleting a lot of his content. And you'll actually see some examples of him deleting content just recently concerning our debate. The reason why we had the debate, and one thing too is you see the screenshot. That's the only thing that I know of that exists from the debate that we had. That's from his Instagram story. I have an Instagram. I do use it, but I'm pretty Instagram stupid. I'm actually gadget stupid, which is not ironic. I am a computer professional. I do web dev, web design, print media, multimedia in every facet format that you can think of. But when it comes to gadgets, I'm not that guy. You know, I like the shiny blinky lights, and I'm not a complete what is it, troglodyte? I don't even know. But yeah, gadgets are not my fare. Anyway, this image, it's funny, we're going to actually get back to the image that he decided to share on his story, because there are two different things in here that are hilarious. One thing that I will tell you, that the debate, the genesis of the debate started here, and I just noticed that I'm in the way, so let me get myself out of the way here. Thank you, and thank you for your patience. What you're seeing here is a conversation. It's starting off at the very beginning with a friend of mine responding to a statement that Ryan had made. And as you can see, Ryan had made a statement about, like, and you've seen this in conservative media, actually all media, because what happens is the conservative media, they make this big fuss about something just stupid. They get a lot of kinetic energy behind it, and then because there's so much attention drawn to it, and because our news media is not necessarily driven by a political ideology, they are definitely driven by a financial obligation to their shareholders and just to themselves. They want to profit. They want to make as much money as they can, and I think it's a sad state of affairs. When I hear like Fox News bragging about the ratings, I'm like, well, that's not the metric that I want my news based on. Just because more people are watching this certain channel, that has absolutely nothing to do with how factual the information that's being relayed from that news station to me is. So I don't care if I'm watching a news channel and I'm the only one watching it. I really just want to watch a news channel or any media source that's going to be honest with me, or as data rich as they can possibly be in relation to where they are in a news cycle concerning a specific subject. You know what I mean? You got to give them some flexibility for breaking news and things like that. If you hear about a great tragedy, you would never hold the initial numbers of casualties related to a major tragedy. You would never hold to the first numbers that you heard, because those numbers they can increase or decrease as more data and more information is gleaned by the professionals, and that's relayed out to the media. But anyway, this is just Ryan was reacting to the current conservative meme fake outrage topic. Really, I think Matt Walsh and Rowling, J.K. Rowling, they've really done a good job with this just bullshit outrage over people that are living with the trans experience, and they've just built this bizarre and strange hatred towards these people, and not just the people of trans experience either, but just drag queens. And listen, if you don't know anything about drag queens, it's the most fun shit you could ever witness if you've ever gone to a drag show. I check all of the generic white guy boxes. I'm a middle-aged straight white guy who has a home, a car, 2 cats, and just all of the generic shit that an old white guy can identify with. I'm that person, okay? And when you go to a drag show, you're seeing, for one, the thing that gets me hyped is the craft, the art, the a lot of the performers, almost all of the performers, they create their own costumes, and the makeup that they do, it's not the kind of makeup that a person's gonna wear necessarily to hit on someone else. It's art. It's like was it kabuki theater? It's just this full-on people doing full-on performance art, being different characters and things like that. It's fun. It's truly innocent, amazing fun. And one of my best friends here in my city used to put them together, and he introduced me to them, and it was like, this was just amazing, and if you've ever been to a Broadway show, it's like going to a much lower budget Broadway show, and it's everything that you would want, from music to comedy to just straight up silliness, and it's a very comfortable place. And I think it's just so messed up to me that that is an area in culture, or in some people's culture. I don't even know how it's a hobby for a lot of people. It's, maybe like a lifestyle for some people, in the same way that a very sincere hobby. I don't consider skateboarding a hobby. It's more than that, so I would imagine, like, when it comes to drag shows, there's a lot of people that see that the same way, because it has so many similar aspects to skating. So I can only go with what I know, and so I will relate to, I see skating as an art form. It's physical. It is a performance art. I don't dismiss anybody that has the opinion that skateboarding is a sport. I don't dismiss them. I just don't have that perception, and so, that's all good. But just on the art front, if you can see a parallel between what skateboarding is and what drag queens do, then you'd see that this demonization of what they do, which is perfectly fine. And sure, you know what, you can find an image, maybe you can find a video in or out of context that may seem inappropriate. You can do that with skaters too. You can do that with anything. And the thing is it's such an irrelevant thing to be pissed about or to be concerned about, and we're going to get into that in just a second. So Ryan here, responding to my friend, speaks about he's not insecure, which I will push back on. He loves himself, which I don't doubt. That's all good. Promotes the God stuff. Okay, this is the thing here. So my friend again, so you can be around LGBTQ people and not go gay, but you feel the rest of the world will go gay being exposed to a pride parade. This is the thing that kind of sparked a little something in my head. It was when I saw his response, and I think kids being exposed to the abbreviation ideals at a young age can confuse them into thinking differently. Now, here's the problem with that. For one, with the LGBTQ plus, saying ideals, like, for one, LGBTQ plus is not an organization. It's not a monolith. We're literally looking at a collection of very broad labels that the only commonality between any of the people that are underneath those labels, or that might relate to those labels, the only commonality between any of them is the label itself. These are completely different people. There's no agenda. Now, we can say that there are political agendas, but they're not agendas that are part of an organization, an organized front. You can look at it the same way as again, like being a skater. We're not part of an organization. We just all identify with this particular single little label, and that label does nothing else. It doesn't identify or speak to any other aspect of our existence. Obviously we know skaters that are completely to the left. We know skateboarders that are as right wing as can be, and if you think about the between, that's where most people are, and there's somewhere in between those two, and that's a gradient. And not even a gradient, a pure gradient. It's a swirly gradient, because people, again, they're complicated. People may have a very liberal or leftist idea about point A, and then they may have what would be considered a more conservative idea about point B. That's all fine. Anyway, my friend brings up just, some inappropriate flags being used by some right-wingers, some MAGA folks, and he's talking about, essentially, like, where's the equivalency? How is this okay? but just, kids at either having a drag queen come to their school to be funny and have fun and sing songs and do that kind of stuff. Like, there's just nothing there. Anyway, what got deleted right underneath the flag image that my friend had posted was something to the effect, it was a pro-life, which I'm not going to even say pro-life, because it's not he doesn't have a pro-life position. And most of the people that I speak with, I know that there are some people that actually are consistent with this and buy it. I will say they're being intellectually consistent with themselves, or internally consistent with their logic, and those are the people that are they're against abortion, and they are also against the death penalty. Now, I don't really agree with how they get to some of their reasoning, but I see that they're being consistent with their way of thinking. So I appreciate that, although I will have a debate with them on how they get to their conclusions, because personally, I believe in a woman's right to choose. I've got nothing to do with that shit. I don't have kids, don't want them. I love kids. I respect them. I think they're rad. I've helped to bring up generations of kids in my local skate scene, and again, like just very early on in this stream, talked about how this channel has been around since the beginning of YouTube. I've had conversations with kids that have become adults and become friends with them on Facebook and on Instagram, like little kids that they started off as little kids on this channel that have grown up, and we've all known each other in this virtual environment, but they're the homies, So anyway, Ryan made his statement about being against supporting abortion, and I made the statement that you don't support abortion, which is something that's not in the Bible, for a God that's killed more children than any other being. If you were to approach that in the belief that God existed as described in the Bible, this is not, also I want to say that this is in no way a statement that is whoop, you know what, I did not do that transition that I need to do, I'm so sorry. But anyway, yeah, so this is not a controversial statement that God has killed more children than any other being, and what's missing here that he deleted, this is Ryan, by the way, and this is what I mentioned with Ryan deleting content. He's deleting just stuff we talked about just a couple days ago as of this recording. What he had mentioned something, I think, about death being natural or something. It was something to that degree, and I meant no. I mean your God explicitly murdering children, and he wanted me to give him an explanation for that. And that's out of order. Okay, so when he asked me for an explanation as to what I was talking about of God literally killing kids, the first one was the most obvious one, and that was the flood. That story, by the way, and I mentioned it in the thread, I love Twitter so much. I know for many people it's like just the bottom of the barrel of the internet, but I think to me it's the comment section for the internet, and I love it. And anyway, I love condensing language, and so basically write a paragraph, and then you just start removing all of the words until you've got this condensed, just vacuum sealed statement that's very compact but can really say a lot of things. So basically it just mentioned that the flood was actually Stolen is a strong word, but I was trying to use some slightly strong language in this conversation. Stolen from Gilgamesh, but in the flood, God kills the whole world, so that had to include babies, and this was something that was also brought up in the debate. This is actually, all of this Twitter stuff right now is right before the debate, and I mentioned Passover, where the deal was God literally killed the firstborn in Egypt unless you had blood painted on the threshold of your doorway, and that wasn't even limited to like humans. Like, God killed the firstborn of everything in Egypt for families that did not take part in the Passover ritual as dictated by God to, was it Abraham, to the king at the time. And then I also had mentioned in Psalm 137:9 that God blessed the act of bashing babies' heads against rocks. So by all means, look up anything that I say here. I also, as you can see there, I offered a little bit more. One thing that I had taken out of order was this thing here, but this will make sense to the context of what I was just talking about. So drag queens aren't pedos, my guy. Most child abuse is what I should have said, is done by family members and friends of the family. And this is not just like a minuscule statistic. This is by far a vast number, the vast majority of abuse that kids that are being abused encounter happens from people that are in the family. There are people that are either blood related or they're friends of the family. That's who, if you're concerned about the safety of kids, that's who you look out for. And then this is the dissonance part that I really don't like either. And it's another one that I see this come up all the time. Anyone that forces little kid into LGBTQ ideals, again, there are no such thing as LGBTQ ideals. They're not a monolithic force. And especially the extreme ones, such as self-mutilating, removing body parts. This is actually going to relate to the ender of our debate. And taking hormone blockers is a child abuser. Anyway, let's see here. Anyone that forces okay, so the cognitive, there's the dissonance here, and also the cognitive dissonance that Ryan is showing right here is that he's separating children from LGBTQ plus, right? Well, those kids are going to be parts of their respective LGBTQ, I don't know really what the word is, those labels. They're going to eventually, if they don't already as kids, when they get older, they are part of that. Some of them, statistically, whatever the stats are now, when it comes to just non-straights like me, that number's going to be the same. And so if you're going to be talking about all of the kids, then you're also, especially if you're going to be demonizing certain labels that humans recognize as a part of their human experience, well, if you're demonizing those people and those labels to all kids, then you're demonizing that same percentage of kids that are growing up to be those people. And so, people wonder why, well, not everybody, idiots wonder why there are higher suicide rates in some of the, in the LGBTQ communities. And, well, it's not because they're gay. It's not that. It's because they've got to deal with next level shit. Like, if I was growing up and someone was like, the relationship that you have with another person of legal age and of complete consent, who is your peer in every way, the person that you love, because you love this person, I think you abuse kids. Like, that's the most... What could be more messed up? I can't think of many things more messed up to say to another person. It's just abhorrent. It's just disgusting. It's immoral. And it's just... It's base. It's base. Not based, but base. To level that kind of accusation against a person that really is just trying to do their own shit and enjoy their own life, and you've got to hop in and be an asshole. I got no respect for that whatsoever. So this was really the impetus for the conversation. And you're going to see that the timestamps are a little bit weird on some of these, and that's just because some of them I had stamped like as things were happening. I didn't know that I was going to be collecting these for any reason, so that's why you're going to see all these deleted things. So anyway, right here, Ryan was very insistent on, come and debate on Instagram, where he has his 100,000 subscribers, and here again, I'm gadget stupid. I know how to use Instagram, but I've never used the Instagram live feature, and I've definitely never shared a live feature with anyone on Instagram, so it was totally on the spot. And it was when I say debate, this was not like a parliamentary procedure in the UK or anything like that. This was definitely an internet debate on Instagram, and it had that aesthetic and that level of professionalism. So there was a lot of crosstalk, a lot of loud shit. But what you see, oh, by the way, at the bottom there, my last comment or my last tweet here, I had to bring that up because Ryan had told me he was going to hook it up. He was going to give me a copy of the debate, because up until after the debate, I didn't know how to record I didn't know you could just screen record natively with your phone. I use an iPhone. I'm a dummy, guilty. So I was not able to, but he did record it, and he said he would share it, and he decided not to. And he decided not to because he got completely wrecked. I mean, just completely demolished. And so what I want to do here is, and I was starting to say this at the very beginning of the stream, whenever I receive new gear, new equipment from skate companies, I like to present it, review it, and just share my perspective on what you're viewing on camera. And so gonna do the same thing with the debate that unfortunately you can't see because Ryan is too embarrassed to share it. And I think that sucks because he does some pretty self-deprecating humor, and he took he took a bunch of major L's in our conversation, and it wouldn't have even mattered if he'd been correct, which he consistently was not. He wasn't able to really convey the ideas that he had in a successful way. And he also did some things in the debate that I've seen a bajillion times, and I wanted to share those because I think that they're gonna help benefit everybody, including Ryan, when he eventually sees this. Hey buddy, it's no hate, man. You actually, like I said, I told you on Twitter, this can be educational, and so I want to make something, not necessarily pretty, but something maybe a little bit more attractive out of something that resulted out of ugliness. And so it started off, well, one thing to keep in mind, on Twitter, you could kind of notice, and there are remnants of the original thread still there. you notice when you get into conversations with people, like for me, my conversations or debates, whether we're talking about science, we're talking about theology, or politics, any of the hot button kind of stuff, like a lot of people will not just really move goalposts, they'll literally change topics on you without addressing you possibly correcting them or providing some vital information to the conversation that you were having. And Ryan's pretty good about doing that, but he's not subtle. He's got a lot of energy. He's not dumb or anything like that. I would never say anything like no personal insults to him at all, but he does have some insulting ideas. And one of the first things I will say was that when I first hopped in, got in there with him, he started off with this "you believe" stuff. Now, one thing, if you're having a conversation, a debate, an argument, whatever, never, ever allow the person that you're talking to project what they think you think onto you, especially if you're in a public format, if there's an audience potentially, but even on a personal note, don't ever let anyone define your position. You don't do that. You stop them very quickly, which is what I did. So it was like "you believe something," and it's just like, dude, no. And even if the let's say our adversary in the debate is describing you accurately, you still don't allow them the power and authority in the conversation to even attempt to describe you. Because if you allow them to correctly describe you and you're like, well, then they've already got a little bit of an own on you going right there. So the idea is to break out of any potential box that someone's going to try to put you in, because anytime that happens, anytime that you allow yourself to get put into a weird box, you've kind of screwed up, and you've allowed yourself to put an opening in your armor for future topics as they come in, because they think if they can define you right off the bat like this, then anything that they say and anything they project, they can keep on and create a rhythm. They can keep a theme going on in the conversation, where they can, every time they have a stupid idea about what you could possibly believe, they're going to throw it on you, and you're going to sit there with like a buffet of things where you will pick that say, okay, that applies, but that doesn't. No, reject any attempt from anyone to define you in your conversation with someone else. Do not let them do that. Another thing in the debate that was brought up, this is pretty close to the top one, and this was funny because and you had to be there, Ryan. Release the debate, man. This was kind of funny because I actually told Ryan what he was about to do here, and then he did it, and I gave him an answer. And so I think it okay, this was related to a conversation that we had about he wanted to bring up the question is, do I believe in kids, like little kids getting hormone therapy, or little kids having surgical procedures, I guess, when it comes to issues of gender. The conversation was a bit muddled, so not really sure, but it's kind of irrelevant, because I told him, he went, so if, and then I stopped and I said this, literally I said this, I said, so if blank, would I believe in it or support it? And then I said, blank equals something really stupid. So what he's doing is trying to build a straw man. He's like, oh, so if a doctor says that, a mom should give their baby a face tattoo, you support that, Well, no, of course not. He's bringing up something where he's just trying to control the conversation in a really cheap way. So he's bringing up something ridiculous that he thinks is related to the actual topic, but it's not. He's giving maybe a somewhat adjacent fictional scenario that's going to be ridiculous, and he's like, would you support this ridiculous thing? And if you don't support this ridiculous thing, how can you support this connected additional thing when it's not even actually connected? So I told him, it's like, you're basically you're asking me, do I support stupid thing? And to any stupid thing that you're asking me, do I support it? I'm going to say no. And he's like, oh, so you don't support blank. And I said, dude, I don't support the stupid things. And basically his question is a template. You can swap out the blank with anything. And it's just, it's a form of projection. It's an attempt to create a straw man. And it's also a way to try to control the conversation by having you on defense, to get you to be like, oh no, oh yeah, I agree with you, or I disagree with you on this. And it's just like, for the conversation that we were having, it was just completely ridiculous. Another thing too is Ryan was under the impression that I hated him or something, and I wasn't. Like, all of the things that I said to him are on Twitter. Some of the things are on Instagram, I think, but they're definitely on Twitter, because if there's anything on Instagram, then I probably posted it on Twitter, or it's in here in this presentation. But he thought that I was going to come at him like hating on him, and I don't. Like, legitimately, I had found out the same day that he was lumping in people that identify one way or the other with the LGBTQ plus labels. I had a great opinion of Ryan. I was a fan, I wasn't maybe an up-to-date fan, but I was like a legacy fan of his silly humor. So, when he asked me my opinion, and this also touches onto that photo, that screenshot, when he asked me my opinion about him, I told him that I just thought he was not a very curious person. And this is going to make that photo just mean so much more in just a second. I also, I had to bring this up because throughout this conversation, his consistent theme, his consistent message was that people that are in the LGBTQ plus sphere are abusers, and the word is groomer now, and all these things. Statistically speaking, when it comes to the abuse of little kids, the abuser is someone just like me, a middle-aged white guy, probably married. The kids would either be blood related again, or they'd be kids from like a family that I'd be friends with. You know what I'm saying? That's where the abuse happens. So if you are concerned about child abuse in any form, then just keep an eye out on the kids in your neighborhood. And this is something that I brought up in his debate to his audience. If you really are concerned about the safety of kids, well, the kids are not going to be harmed at a library where a book about something that could be deemed homosexual is located. When it comes to abuse, I mean, it's domestic. It starts at home. So if you want to back the kids, and you just keep an eye on them, see how their parents talk to them, see how their parents act around them, see if these kids, how they play, if they're your next door neighbor or whatever. Do these little kids that have some really weird maybe messed up bruises that can't quite, you don't think would make sense if you know the kid. Inquire, do whatever you got to do to be a good neighbor. I don't know. Every scenario is different, but the actual abusers of kids are the next door neighbors. It's not the drag queen singing a funny song and getting kids to dance around in a what little one of those lines. I don't know what you call them. And okay, this is the part though that just, this was the hammer drop for me. This is, read the Bible before debating it. This is what makes the image that you see here so incredibly funny to me personally. And it was the bomb drop. I think personally, it was the bomb drop in our debate where it didn't even matter anymore. So what you're seeing is at a certain point, I had brought up the scriptures that I'd mentioned, and he had pulled out this Bible, and it looked well worn and everything like that. And we were talking about the Bible, and I had mentioned that I studied Christian theology for about 20 years, and 10 of those years as a practicing evangelical fundamentalist Christian literalist. Everything I would say I did not, as a kid, I also had an interest in science. So I was, fortunately, I guess, one of those evangelical kids that was also, I had also found a way to reconcile, in my personal faith at the time, I reconciled things that I knew to be correct as far as data points to. So things like the Big Bang, things like the universe being in the neighborhood of 14 billion years of age, like those things I knew to be true. It was everything else, though. I was, very conservative on some things as a kid, but then I got more really into the theology itself and learning more about the history of the times, learning, and if you know what I'm talking about, it'll be like interesting, an interesting irony, and that was like learning about Constantine and actually learning about the beginning of Christianity and how really Christianity as we know it, and especially during the holidays, is just it's basically during the time of Constantine, a Roman emperor, had become Christian. His people, the population that he ruled over, were pagans. They were pagan Saxons, for the most part. And he took all of their pagan beliefs and he incorporated them into Christianity because he didn't want to have like a big uprising. He didn't want to completely demolish every tradition that these generational pagans practiced. So that's why during Easter we have Easter eggs. That has nothing to do with the resurrection, but everything to do with fertility. So you can look at the Christian holidays and easily point out, winter solstice, summer solstice, and whatnot. These are pagan events, and this is where these things came from. So anyway, Ryan flat out admitted that he had not read the Bible. On top of the theology, I also, when I went to school, initially I went to school to study English education, which put me in two different colleges. So I was in the College of Education and the College of English. And that's at least the way my university, Southeastern Louisiana University here, it was structured. Inside of the College of English, my focus, not my concentration, but my focus was on Greek literature, because that was just, I thought, the most fascinating thing in the world. And when you're already in that literary mindset, when you know that's your interest, well, the New Testament was also written in Greek, and there are reasons for that, and I'm not going to go into it, but it's really interesting when you go into the actual history of the assembly and the way that that book was put together and why it was put together, and the movement that eventually got it into the hands of civilians as opposed to the religious leaders at the time, who were the only ones that were allowed to dictate what words were on those pages. But anyway, he had not read the Bible, and also informed me and his people in the audience that he listened to Jordan Peterson. And Jordan Peterson was essentially the person that he used to receive his theological information, and his information about his faith, and the information about the book that he had not read. And he'd already proudly mentioned, too, by the time that this came up, he's holding the Bible, and he said that this book lives in me. My only retort was like, dude, no, not if you haven't read it. Like, it literally can't be in you if you've not cracked it open and ingested the material. Oh, and I see Skater D. What's up, Skater D? My friend, Twitter gangster. His strawman argument was irrelevant because they don't allow children to get... they don't allow the procedures. Ryan is really showing us ignorance if it believes children are being forced in these procedures. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, is like, the arguments now, there was a day, like, I will say, and I've mentioned it on Twitter probably ad nauseum. I've never brought it up on here because this is probably the first time I've ever talked about hard politics on this channel ever. But you know, it's an issue because this is a prominent guy in our community. It's really upsetting to see just the way he's demonizing our own. You know, he's demonizing people in our family, in our skate family, and it's ignorance for sure, but it's also mixed in with some sort of anger, because I truly remember him as a funny guy and everything that he did was funny. Now though, things have changed a bit, because like I'd mentioned, there seems to be, like, on his Reddit, there seems to be a bit of a change as far as the perception that people have of him now. That he's been making a lot of really weird, way out there right-wing political statements, and those political statements are you know, he's anti-BLM, which is something he brought up like right off the bat when we got into the debate. And like, I told him right off the bat in there that I was like, dude, BLM, like, that's a distraction. And I don't believe BLM is a distraction. I support BLM, and as an ally, am there to do whatever I can do to help to basically stop police departments from murdering unarmed black people and other people of color as well. You know, it actually just demilitarizing the police, and actually, you know, going back to having cops on the beat, that would help. You know, a presence instead of just having every cop is like armed to the teeth, dressed like a Terminator or a SEAL, or like at least dressed up like SEAL operators, and just like the random guy that lives in the back of your neighborhood that has the tack vests and the extended magazines and everything, but never really leaves his yard. Like we saw with Uvalde, that it doesn't matter if you're just a non-commission poser or if you're a poser with a real badge. You're still just a poser. So anyway, if you're going to debate the Bible, essentially just make sure that you read it. And you saw earlier on how, you know, when I had made the claim to Ryan about God murdering kids, he and the other stories, he broke off into this, and this is a Jordan Peterson thing. He had showed me. Now, I don't know if this is the exact photo that he showed me, but it's very similar, and it's the same thing. But I don't know if this is the exact same photo that he shared. But what this is evidently a these are cross references, and during the debate, Ryan used the term hyperlink when I pointed out. We're going to use the flood as an example. He made an accusation to me in the debate, in the conversation, that I used the flood story out of context, which, I've definitely heard things out of context. I may have even, not in this conversation, but in other conversations, I may have intentionally taken things out of context to make a point, but not in bad faith. I think there are moments and times where you can just kind of demonstrate what bad faith looks like by taking things out of context. But anyway, I asked how I could take an entire story out of context when I was actually providing him the entire story as my example of God killing kids. Like, that's what context does one need? And I did inquire, and I did not get an answer. But anyway, what he did though was, for the parts of the Bible that he was like, you can't show me that God killed anybody or killed any kids. Well, when I would point to a specific story, he brought up the hyperlink thing. And what he was doing was, he was seeing me present a scripture down to the verse, or actually not even down to the verse, because I'm a little bit more fair than that. Don't stop at the verse. Read the chapter, or read whatever is before and after. You can read whatever you want, and anyway, first of all, when he first showed me the image, I was like, well, dude, you're showing me like story arcs. And then I realized it wasn't a story arc, because if you know the history and the way that the Bible was assembled, then that part of those tools in literature and in writing really weren't done in the classical sense, like if you were to write a book. But there was one thing that I was able to bring up, and especially when you look at the larger arcs in this image. And this was also a really funny one, and I think, aside from him admitting that he did not read the Bible that he was holding up in that photo, oh goodness, wait, I'm losing myself, and I apologize here. So one of the things, this is one of the funny things, and this is probably another reason why he does not want this video of our debate online, is because of one obvious thing that he completely clowned himself on. Now, looking at this beautiful, almost fractal it's not upside down. I'm saying this beautiful image, this fractal taco that is the Bible linking to itself. Looking at the left, at the very beginning, and this is kind of how I presented in the debate. If you look at the beginning of this image, and let's say you wrote something, and I'm asking Ryan now, if you wrote something down, or let's say, you found a piece of paper that had a story on it, and it was written 1,000 years ago, and you read it. That was 1,000 years ago. So let's say you're going from the very beginning of this rainbow. You've read this thing that was written here, and then 1,000 years later in the Bible. So what is it, 2,000 years? I don't know. But you go all the way over here, and this is where you are compared to where this was written. Now, what if you, still with the document that's fresh in your brain, if you wrote something based on that document, well, you've created this big arc. There's nothing secret to that. It's a story arc, and it's something, inspired by the original piece. The funny thing is that Ryan didn't understand what I was saying. So I was like, okay, and this is all, I'm saying what I'm thinking out loud because I felt completely comfortable. I felt comfortable enough in this conversation that I could actually describe to Ryan exactly what I was doing, and why I was doing it. So, anyway, I had taken that situation that I illustrated of you have this 1,000-year-old document, you read it, and so you write something based off of that 1,000-year-old document. Automatically, you've created one of the long arcs in this image. He didn't quite understand what I was saying, so I said, okay, let me put it this way. Today, you wrote something. Tomorrow, you write something else based on what you wrote today. Do you understand that connection? And he did. I said, okay, that's a little version of an arc in this image. Because, if someone reads a scroll, or actually in this case, if someone reads in or reinterprets or interprets the scroll from one language to another, and they have the benefit of history of all these old books, well, any newer book can bounce off of the old contents and the old stories. Whoops, sorry about that. Super easy. And so we went into that, and he kept getting really pissed about me not recognizing Jordan Peterson as a theological scholar, and me honestly telling him that yes, I am indeed more of a Bible scholar than Jordan Peterson. I'll prove that to him any day. The conclusion, this was fun, but kind of frustrating because I still had some stuff to say, but there was one thing where Ryan had said something that was so off the wall to me that it literally made me speechless, and I got caught. There's a name for it, but in fact, there's a name for it, especially when a very feminine voice has like a slight crackle to it for a split second. There's a name for that. I let out that same kind of it was a slightly rough sound because he said this thing, and I was just like in my head going, what in the holy hell did you what? So it came out as like he's flabbergasted, and he interpreted that, I guess, as me being like floored by logic or something like that, which it wasn't, and I thought it was funny that was even his perception. Unfortunately, it was around that time that he started calling me weird, which, yeah, like I have this channel to prove that a million times over. And let's see, there was one more thing that he kept saying. Yeah, basically, I mean, during the whole thing, he kept bringing up these just stupid points that didn't make any sense, relate to the topic at hand, making generalizations, and truly, his end result is, what's happening is, and it's so typical, he's taking his biases, his hatred that he has for people that he thinks are gross and icky. He's taking that, he's wrapping it up in this cloak of faith. Because one thing that he also said, I quote, and many people, and I know I've heard this in the South a lot, and I imagine people everywhere else have heard it too, but he did make the statement where he doesn't hate the sinner, he hates the sin. And that to me is such a bullshit, I mean, it's a bullshit thing to say, because for one, everyone knows that that's just a condescending, judgmental remark. And, this is, you're talking about, you're trying to make a religious statement when your Messiah himself said, judge not lest ye be judged. And so, the fella, just, he needs to go into my general advice to everybody, and that's don't be a dick. Doesn't mean you have to have one to be one. Just don't be one. You know, if someone has a title, has a pronoun or a whatever, some sort of label before their name, and they want to be addressed in a certain way, well, don't be a dick. Refer to people how they want to be referred to. How hard is that? And that's really the ask. Is that the rage-inducing, I guess, flavor of the day? That, oh no, someone wants me to address them the way they want to be addressed, and I can't control how I dictate their identity by overriding their request to be referred to one way, and so instead, I'm going to contradict their wish, go out of my way to be an asshole, and call them something that they are not. It's just the lamest shit. And, I know, look, Old Testament God, he was a bloodthirsty character. I don't think that as a character just written, I don't think he's a character that you could say was, very affectionate. He wanted Abraham to, kill his own son, and Abraham was actually gonna do it by stabbing him to death. But then God was like, wait, no, don't. And people were like, okay, God didn't want Abraham to kill the kid, but Abraham was willing to kill his kid, because he heard God in his head. And I'm thinking about that scenario, and that I'm talking with someone who is so anti-abortion that they ignore the fact, again, that abortion's not in the Bible, and again, that, if you're pro-life, a concept which is just disingenuous, it's anti-abortion, except for a few people, I think, that are consistent with that type of thinking, even though I don't agree with how they get to that conclusion. You're going to sit here and claim to be pro-life while worshiping one of the most bloodthirsty characters that has ever been written, and you're going to cloak your hatred, outright hatred. You're going to say you hate the sinner, and you don't hate the sinner, but you hate the sin. But look, I got news for you. These things like sexuality, those are forms of being. It's not. If you want to make something a sin, let's say if you believe that being gay, for example, is a sin, and I'm speaking inside his parameters, not mine. Okay, if you believe that being gay is sin, then you're just saying that your God strictly created a human ball of sin. The act of being, because we're talking about being gay, being trans, being lesbian, being bi, being these things. There's no sin in being, in existing. That's completely dismissing. That's not splitting the sinner from the sin. You can't, because being, it's intrinsically linked into being. It's so insane. So look, what I want to say is, at least there are certain places where I think skaters have been kicking a lot of ass, and one of them, I think, is in my local community. And I think that, again, I'm going to bring up Twitter. I love Twitter. I have a Facebook. I hate it. I use it to see who's had a baby and who has passed away. And Instagram every once in a while. But Twitter is like my shit. Like, I love Twitter. And if you go to Twitter, I really recommend getting up on the Skate Twitter hashtag. Don't worry, Brian doesn't use it. And getting in there, and especially if you are someone that is in the LGBTQ framework of labels, the matrix. If you identify in that group and you skate, and if you don't identify in like that and you skate, and you have Twitter installed and you don't use it, hop on, use the Skate Twitter hashtag, and get to know everybody. It's a good crew, and there's a little bit of everybody in there, and so you're going to find somebody that's going to have some sort of overlap with you in one way or the other. And I know that, and I know this from my own experience, like growing up in a smaller town, especially, that if you are a person that does identify with any of those labels that kind of put you on the outsider thing, it's so much more intensified, generally speaking, in these rural areas, because you don't have, especially if you have a rural area that you aren't able to escape, you don't have like the mobility that you would like to have. It can be really hard. I mean, it's hard on everybody who is experiencing difficulty, because look, it's compared to me, being a victim of violence out on the street. It's more likely to happen to people that rock one of the colors of the flag. Now, it's just, I mark all the check boxes, and I will say, and I've said it in print. I probably don't. I don't really check the wealth box, and then I only check part of the class box. But I think that the class part is the part where it directly relates to and overlaps with the wealth part. Generally speaking, I've got all the check marks, and so that was another thing, and I bring that up because I believe that Ryan came into the debate thinking, I'm assuming that I was gay, and I'm saying that because there was a point where he's got a couple of things that I saved, where he was talking to the black community and saying that and speaking in his words, not mine, but we, referring to the black community, are oppressed. We're not oppressed. We're essentially, neither is the LGBT community. There's no oppression or anything like that. But I know that, compared to me statistically, being a victim of violence, a trans woman is the likelihood of a trans woman walking down a street, a same street that I might walk down in, let's say, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the odds of her being attacked violently, you can't even compare those odds to the odds of me getting jumped. But I'm not the smallest little guy, but I mean, the thing is the disparity is there, that people in, you say communities, these loose communities, but people that identify with these particular labels, they're at more risk than people give them credit for. And when you hear these dismissive things made by people that do have a prominent place, and skateboarding is getting to a point where it hasn't been that long since skateboarding really has turned itself around as far as its approach to women in the activity. And I don't know, I can't speak to it, I literally don't know what the environment was for women earlier on. Like, I started skating in the 80s and have been on since then. I don't know if it was I don't know if it was because we had given blue toys to all the babies so hard and given pink toys to all the little girls so hard back then, that maybe there was a disinterest in skateboarding, that maybe girls were drilled to not be interested into that, or if there was some jock mentality in skating that was pushing girls away from taking part. I don't know, because I mean, again, I would not have been exposed to that, and I just, that would have not been a thing that I was stoked on girls when I saw girls skating because it was so rare to see, you know. And now that we see, you know, women with such a big presence in our activity, in our art or sport, if that's what you choose to call it, but I think it's really rad, and I just think that being old enough to see how women have blown up and completely secured a position in not only skateboarding, because they've always had a place, it's just been tiny. We never could find the women, and that's thanks probably to the media. And I don't think it's due though to disinterest. There are women, there are girls that love skating, you know, so they for so long did not get to see themselves in the magazines because their numbers weren't as big. You had a couple, you know, Cara Beth and Laura Rigsby. I mean, I'm going way back, you know, but like literally they were like a handful of prominent women, and now it's like, I mean, Marissa Del Santo is one of my favorite skaters, period. That's like, just, there's no delineating, oh, this is my favorite woman skater, this is my favorite dude, bro. Marissa Del Santo, and there are many others, but just her in particular, though, she's just like, just the gnarliest skater, and the way she skates is so haywire and hectic and just amazing. But anyway, what I'm saying is that from my experience and from what I've seen, you know, when I started skateboarding in the 80s, you know, the people that I saw, there were no skaters in my town that I knew when I was a kid, so I would maybe every once in a while see like a commercial. A couple of years after getting into skateboarding, I started in 85, it might have been 86 or 87, a local grocery store in my town, Jackson, Louisiana, a very rural, tiny, small town, had a Thrasher mag, and I immediately got mom to get it for me. And I saw just, you know, these people from every culture, you know, like I was like, oh, these people are doing this and they're all sick, you know. And this is back when Thrasher would run ads of people doing a slappy, and at the same time you turn the page and see Christian Hosoi doing like a 30-foot air on a 2-foot quarter pipe, you know. But we saw like a lot of diversity, and then we saw like, because the teams, you know, were covering everybody. Again, though, we didn't have the woman presence, but there was like diversity when it came to race and culture and ethnicities and things like that, and that was really sick. So skateboarding was kind of like ahead of the game on that. Skateboarding, though, I think behind on the game when it came, well, not I think, but we kind of all know that when it comes to gay folks and skateboarding was pretty slow on that, and we started sounding like jockish, steroided meathead football players, to be quite frank. Got a you know, some homies that are right here that skate, that have skated. One of them in particular, I've known him. He was one of the first people I met when I moved to this city in 1995, and I never knew that he was gay up until just a couple of years ago, because the environment in skating would not allow him to come out, not even to me. And I say that not even to me, not like I'm a particularly special individual, but I thought that he could. I just assumed that he knew he could trust me. But the thing is my friend had been burned so many times that he didn't know who he could trust, and I can't blame him for that. And it's just a messed up situation, because, you know, when gay kids and you know, other people that are, you know, at some place on that rainbow, once they realize that, they immediately have to deal with friction that is directly opposed to their very being, to the core of their identity. And that's a repulsive thought to me. It should be a repulsive thought to anybody that has a half-assed, semi-functioning sense of empathy. We can be better people. And I'm about to close this out. This actually went way longer than I meant for it to be, and I meant to be a lot more concise. Didn't sleep last night, and I meander a lot, so I apologize. Don't expect too much more political stuff on this channel. That's why I have Grim City TV. But in this case, because it's a prominent person that does have an orbit in skateboarding, I just thought that it was worth bringing this up and to say, look, if you want to fight hate, okay, if you don't care about it, okay, fuck you, and go about your day. But this is our community as skaters. This is our world. We dictate what does and does not go on in this little sphere of ours. And I'm old enough to remember when I was hated just because I was a skateboarder. I've not dealt with issues of oppression, issues of things like that. I don't fit that criteria, you know. If I can relate, it's because I was a skater and I dealt with, you know, the anti-skateboarder mentality that I remember from the 80s and 90s. I've got that. I can extrapolate on that feeling and imagine what it must feel like for someone to judge you and try to lump you in with the worst of human predators, just because someone doesn't quite like the way you get laid. It's so dumb that it is aggravating. And I say it's dumb. I don't want to make light of the fact that it also puts people in a very dangerous situation, because the more people keep perpetuating this myth, this very dangerous myth, that a statistically inconsequential group of people that identify with a single label, you know, have a negative effect in any way on kids, when instead, you know, you should be focusing on, again, focus on the neighbors, focus on dudes that fit the same check marks that I do. Y'all watch Chris Hansen? Who are the people coming over to those houses, those bait houses on Chris Hansen? They're dudes that look like me. And if you're a dude that looks like me, and statistically, according to my analytics, then you probably are a dude that look sort of like me, you know, on a generic front. So, you know, if you truly care about the kids, you truly want to protect those kids, keep an eye out on your neighbors. Just keep an eye out. Just check, does little Timmy have like a weird bruise on his forehead, and you know for a fact that his whole house is full of carpet and they don't have stairs? I'm not saying be a narc on your neighbors, but I'm saying be aware, be self-aware, but also be spatially aware. And I don't mean spatially aware and self-aware in the tactical wannabe Navy SEAL sense. I mean just, you know, educate yourself as much as possible about the reality of the world that we live in, because we don't have a long time here. It's a really cool planet, and there's a lot of shit that we still don't know about. And I don't mean, when I say we, I don't mean just like scientists. I mean me on a personal level. There's less shit that I know than there is more, and I think that this place is so interesting that to see someone with a prominent position who has the ability to use a very solid and big platform, that he could use that to elevate kids. He wants to be a comedian. He's made me laugh. He knows how to make people laugh. If he could use that to make people laugh and elevate the same people that he's attacking and demonizing, well, I think that he'd be onto something. But honestly, I don't think he has the self-awareness to understand the harm that he is causing. And it's not just short-term harm. every time he gets onto the internet and he makes some kind of statement, that's, there's going to be over 100,000 people that are eventually going to see the content. So even if he, let's say 20,000 of his 100,000 followers on Instagram are bots or just spammers or whatever, still, that retaining, let's say 80,000 left over, well, there's still a lot of those people, because they like or comment on the video, that's going to be seen by the algorithm, bump it up a little bit higher, make it visible for more people to see, yada. And he's known, again, for making viral content. So the thing is, if you're a skater and if you have a huge platform, then you do have a responsibility. I have a platform. Like I say, I'm sort of like a non-YouTube skater, and I've been here forever. I've seen YouTube go through all its phases and everything, but I have a platform, as small as it is. I have one here. I have one in real life here in my city. I also have one as it relates to really the southeast region of my state, just because the way the communities are, it's real easy for me to have my homies in New Orleans, my homies in Baton Rouge, my homies in Lafayette, my homies in Lake Charles, which is actually, that's more out west, but southeast, southwest, basically all of the south, anything close to the water at the bottom of the state, that's my whole zone, and it's a part of a family that I've been a part of since the 80s, and as one of the resident old people, I get to see generations of skaters coming up from our areas. And so, I can speak to communities, and there was one thing that I expressed to Ryan, is a couple of times I expressed disappointment because what he's doing is harmful to the very kids that he keeps claiming to be protecting. And the thing is, so look, hate, and this is a common statement, hate is based on ignorance. But there's a thing about ignorance, is you have ignorance where people truly don't know. They don't know a thing until they're informed about it. So I think that's the difference, generally speaking. That's the difference between ignorance and stupidity. Is if you're ignorant, you have the capability of learning this thing, and you are no longer ignorant about that specific thing. Stupidity, you're going to reject all correct information and just maintain a stupid, wrong-headed opinion about said thing. And the thing about the ignorance, though, I mean, there's willful ignorance, and then there's the ignorance that I mentioned where it's just, you're just actually ignorant. But there's willful ignorance as well, which I think is menacing. I think it is it's dishonest. To be willfully ignorant is just it's a dishonest position. And like I told Ryan in our debate, if you have to lie to make your point, then you don't have a point. And that's cliche, but essentially what people are going to be doing, and if you decide to get into conversations online about these issues, just know that one of the things that's going to happen is that, for one, the person that you're going to be having that conversation with, they're going to try to define your position right off the bat, especially if there's an audience, or there's any chance that there could be an audience, because you never know when you're recorded, so that means you're always being recorded. Think like that. So never let them define you. Never let the person that you're debating create the framework for which you have to place your answer in. Don't put your answer, don't never place your answer to a question inside the bowl provided to you by the questioner. There's no reason, even if they insist that you give a binary answer, a yes or no. You don't have to do that. Stop thinking like that. I don't think, when you're talking about complicated questions that deal with humanity, that deal with society, which is kind of redundant because it's another aspect of humanity, but you can't reduce things down to a yes or no. And anyway, basically, be curious about the world. I would say, and again, to tie this back into skateboarding, be curious about other people in the same exact way that you are curious about the red paint on the curb you saw on Smith Street on the way to the coffee shop. Just be curious, because if you're curious, it means you're probably going to find out about it. Eventually, you're going to meander over to that curb, and you're going to see if it's got some good red paint, or if it's old faded red paint and the concrete's a little bit rough and kind of bleeding up through the paint. And how that it would be applicable is if you don't know anybody of trans experience, you don't know anybody, or you don't think you know anybody in the LGBTQ sphere, well, you probably do, and they're plenty easy to meet because they're people, and there's plenty of social media out there where you can engage or read from prominent people that follow, again, underneath one of those labels that they openly associate with. Look them up. Don't ask for the opinion of your local Pentecostal preacher about what gay folks are thinking or their agenda. The best thing to do is primary sources, and that's like, don't be like Ryan Beckford. Instead of letting Jordan Peterson incorrectly recite the Bible to you, open your Bible and read it. And if you find that the language is a little bit weird, because maybe you've got like the King James version and everything is, oh, thouest, thee, thine, well, then get like a New International or just some other common language Bible and read it. And I think it's a perfectly fine read. I don't, follow it, but I still think it's really interesting. And I love debating biblical topics in my free time. Not everything I do is skate related. But that is actually kind of the end of this. The last thing that I'm really going to say, oh hell yeah, Skater D, again, to anybody that's reading this, Skater D is definitely fam over on Twitter at Slit Hooks. Sup. Yeah, still uploading and making content for the tube. Yeah, man. Definitely in that. The video frequency is not like I would like it to be. I don't know if I had mentioned here about the back surgery, but long story short, vertebrae fusion surgery, 2 steel rods implanted. I'd done my full battery of physical therapy. I am back on board, but I'm more in a recovery skate mode right now. I'm trying to find my way back to where I was. I don't know if I'll get quite to where I was right before I had injured myself before the surgery. Right now I have like a weird, maybe my equilibrium is a little bit weird, but the best way to explain it was if you could imagine if you're walking and in the very center of your back you had a ball joint. Like that, there's not anything like that there. It's actually the opposite. It's actually more battened down in the center of my back. But the way it feels, I feel like I have a ball joint, like the same kind of joint you would have in your shoulder, right in the middle of my back. So I feel like I'm teetering, even though I'm not. And it's a sensation that I'm trying to get used to, because when I'm skating, even though I've still got I didn't lose like a lot of my, well, I lost a little bit, but my leg strength, I've still got a lot of that, but I did gain some weight because old. Anyway, all that to say is that I am actively skating. If you're watching this now, or if you are watching this later, which actually, I guess it's almost an ode to Mitch Hedberg, is, there is no such thing as now. I think his joke was, hey, look at this old photo of you, and he's like, yeah, well, every photo is an older photo of you. Anyway, all that to say is just read, be curious, study, don't be a dick, and before you decide to engage with anybody, whether you are on the side that agrees with me or the side that is completely adamantly opposed, do your research. And one thing that I told Ryan's audience in our debate was to not trust me. Don't trust a thing that I say. Prove me wrong. Look up everything that I've said, and let's see what sources support the statements that I've made, because I'm not going to make my statements based off of data that I found in a meme on Facebook in a group called MAGA for 2069. If you want to get data, go to primary sources. They're easy to find, not only from government .gov and .edu sites all over. Look, if you don't feel like reading, just look up any cool topic, any informative topic, dealing everything, biology, sociology, whatever, any subject, and then follow it with the word lecture on YouTube, and you're going to have educational gold for years. It's just, it helps you out because you're learning, you're getting free college material, but you don't have to do the tests. And it's, college lectures are way cooler when you have no skin in the class, and I think it's way easier to pick up on everything that's being said. So my big thing is I like watching or listening to lectures about mental health, but my big thing though is astronomy and astrophysics, and some tech stuff. But really, when it comes to astronomy and astrophysics, like, that's my shit. But I do like listening to lectures about some things as they deal with neurology. And this may sound weird, but it's not that weird when you think about it. There's a guy, is it Donald Hoffman? Yeah, I think it's Donald Hoffman. He's a doctor, a neuroscientist, who basically has been going on. There are certain aspects where he goes a little too far, and he also has done tours with Deepak Chopra, who I think is a charlatan. But Dr. Hoffman, however, it's a common sense thing in that there really is no objective reality. And so keep in mind, so what I'm talking about here is a little bit comparative. Think about a person sitting in their room making videos and comments about how these conspiratorial ideas, where people under these certain afflicted groups, people that are abused and people that are hated on and people that have isms applied to them from other people, like, you spend your day dwelling on new ways to hate these people, and I'm on a tip where I'm tripping out because I'm thinking stuff like, okay, the speed of light travels crazy fast. The speed of sound relative to the speed of light travels crazy slow. But if you're standing in front of me and you talk to me, my brain tricks me into seeing and hearing you at the same time, and your lips stay in sync. And that effect happens as we get farther and farther away. So that's where I'm at. It's like, not to be dismissive of people that have strong opinions about personal shit, but I'm just like, there's so much weird, epic, amazing stuff happening that has nothing to do with hate. Like, you can get completely stoked on the most simple things in the world, like the Planck length, the smallest length a thing can possibly be. The concept of that, the concept of an absolute zero, which is still theoretical. It's a thing that maybe, but probably not, because you can only remove so much, I guess, activity from a void or a vacuum. But there's just, when you think about the epic, next level, big, and subatomic, small, amazing shit that we get to think about, and that we have the tools to consider and appreciate and study, even as a layman, as someone that just will put a video up on YouTube and watch the Vsauce dude go off and say his thing. Enjoy all of that shit. Like, there's so much amazing stuff. To waste your life just hating anyone that is not a person that is victimizing other people, like, why bother? Why would you? I don't know. There's not an answer to that. I don't even know why I'm pondering that. But look, gang, for those of you here, thank you for coming over and putting up with this. Again, I know it's not skate-fed, but when you consider the history of this channel, I think that allotting me the ability to post up a not completely non-skate related video, it is skate related, but to put up something that does cover some political issues, and I think a lot of you that have been following this channel for a long time probably had a hint as to where I was coming from, and those of you that also followed me on IG probably had a hint of where it's coming from. But as far as like my political stuff, like, my outlet is Twitter. That's where I get political, but also hang out with all the skate Twitter family. Like I said, you should join us if you skate, if you have Twitter, or if you're interested in getting Twitter. Look, I sound like a Twitter salesman, but seriously, skate Twitter is one of my favorite skate communities. And my other one, obviously, being Slap, where I'm an admin and a moderator. That Slap is not, I will say, Slap's not for everybody. If you don't like some coarse language, and you don't like some adult themes, not that they don't come up in skate Twitter, but I'll say that Slap can be a little bit darker in its humor, and there's so many internal collective memes, and there's a collective conscious where we kind of have similar references to things. A lot of the jokes that are told in Slap aren't understood by people outside of Slap, because a lot of us have known each other for decades in the forum, and there's a couple people that I even know, because before I was an admin at Slap, I was an admin at the old original Thrasher forum back when Schmitty was running it, and I was doing PHP programming on, I had assisted their old forum. And if you're a geek, then you probably remember PHP BB. That's what their old forum was originally based on, and it used to help Schmitty hack that thing up a little bit. But anyway, you know what? Let me get out of your hair, and thank you for showing up. But look, just learn about things a little bit, because the more you learn about it, I think that's going to help prevent you from hating shit that you don't know anything about. So that kind of helps, right? And when you see, and this is another thing too, for people watching this that are like me, that effectively check all of the privilege boxes, use every one of those privilege boxes that you check to assist, support, and be a proper ally to those that are being harmed or affected in a negative way because they lack those check boxes. See what I'm saying? In any respect where someone has a weakness, if you have a strength, use that strength to help compensate for the weakness that they may have should they want your help. So that's really it. Everybody has somebody that looks up to them. Everybody has someone that respects them, and everybody has that person that, and they don't realize it. So talk the talk, walk the walk, and don't just wait for someone else's problem to fall in your hand. And that's not to say be a busybody and get up in people's shit, but just be sensitive, be aware, and look out for your neighbors. And so, yeah, if you see somebody that's getting completely fucked over by the system or by a peer, then intercede. We've had this weird thing. There used to be, it was called the bystander effect, where something crazy bad is going down. And this was originated really with an old story out of New York, where a woman was being murdered in front of an apartment complex, and it took a long time for that woman to succumb to what was being inflicted upon her, and no one in the apartments came down. They stood by, and we're seeing, I think, and this is just something that I'm saying that I'm seeing, but I don't know if this is statistically the case or not. I don't know who's doing this more, but the standby effect has morphed into something that I'd call proactive standby, and that's now there's a time where if you see someone in distress because of someone else's actions, some people will try to go in, intercede, and do their best to help their neighbor, which that's what I want to be. That's the person I would hope others want to be. But there are going to be the standby people, because people have like a fight or flight response. But the thing is on the flip side, the standby people have mutated into not just standing by, but standing by, pulling their phone out to create content, because watching someone get their head smashed in by someone else is gonna get clicks. I don't know. I think that's bullshit. I know it's bullshit. There's everybody's a brand, I guess, and I say that as someone who literally goes by a brand that he created. But I don't know. I think I'm at the point now where I'm being old and just sounding that way. So, gonna end the stream, and for you that are watching it, thank you so much, and I love you, and I want you to be healthy. So please wear a mask and keep doing everything that your doctor and medical professionals are advising, and take care. And we're out. All of Dirty South represent. Peace.